The summer after graduating college, four friends, Ethan, Natalie, Jason, and Brooke, decided to take one last road trip together before adulthood pulled them in different directions. The plan was simple: rent a van, hit the open road, and make memories they'd talk about for years. But none of them could have imagined that this trip would end in a story they would struggle even to speak of. They left from Denver, Colorado, heading west with the intention of reaching the redwood forests in California. The playlist was full of nostalgic songs, snacks were piled up in the back seat, and they had marked their route with camping stops and scenic detours. The first few days passed like a dream. Laughter echoed through the van, and their Instagram feeds overflowed with mountain views and goofy group selfies. By the fourth night, they found themselves deep in Utah, near a stretch of road known more for its desolate beauty than tourism. They were ahead of schedule and decided to explore an off-route campground someone had mentioned in a travel blog. The post called it a hidden gem, tucked away from cell reception, surrounded by towering rock formations, and so quiet you could hear the wind whisper through the canyons. They arrived just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. A single, faded sign marked the turnoff: Desert Hollow Camp. There were no other cars, no campers, just a dirt road that wound deeper into nowhere. "Are we sure this is the place?" Brooke asked from the passenger seat, peering nervously at the terrain. Ethan, the designated driver and group leader, nodded. "Yeah, this is it. Blog said it's remote but safe. Free too." Jason, always the adventurer, grinned. "Come on, where's your spirit of adventure? This is exactly the kind of spot that makes a trip epic." Natalie, quieter and more intuitive than the rest, didn't say anything. But she had a strange feeling she couldn't explain. It was subtle at first, a tightening in her stomach, the kind that feels like a warning. They parked the van near the only flat stretch of land they could find, surrounded by tall, jagged rocks that looked like ancient sentinels. As darkness crept in, they set up two tents and lit a small campfire with firewood they had brought. For a while, things felt normal. They roasted marshmallows, told stories, and shared laughter that echoed eerily into the cliffs. But as midnight approached, the air grew colder, the fire dimmer, and the silence heavier. That's when Jason noticed it first. "Did anyone hear that?" he asked, suddenly alert. "Hear what?" Ethan replied, poking at the fire. "Like rocks shifting. Footsteps on gravel." Brooke rolled her eyes. "Don't start trying to scare us." "No, seriously," Jason insisted. "It wasn't an animal. It sounded human." Natalie sat up straighter, her earlier unease resurfacing. "I heard something too," she said softly. Ethan stood, scanning the shadows beyond the firelight. "Let's not freak out. We're probably just being paranoid. Still, let's keep the fire going through the night. I'll stay up first." Jason offered to keep watch with him, while the girls reluctantly retreated to their tent. The two guys sat in silence, flashlights in hand, listening. An hour passed with no sign of anything unusual. Just wind. Just stars. But then they heard it again. This time, a low scrape against rock, closer than before. Ethan stood. "Who's there?" he called out. No reply. Jason's flashlight flicked across the rocks, catching nothing but desert brush and shifting shadows. They didn't wake the girls yet, but they stayed alert the rest of the night. When morning finally broke, they found something chilling. Not far from the fire, someone or something had drawn crude stick figures in the sand. 4 of them, each with an X over the head. One had long hair. Another had a hoodie drawn beside it, like the one Ethan always wore. Brooke gasped when she saw it. "What kind of sick joke is this?" "This wasn't here last night," Ethan said. "We would have noticed." "Someone was watching us," Natalie whispered, pale. They packed up in record time. The road back out from the campsite was long and winding, and it wasn't until they'd driven nearly 20 miles that any of them relaxed enough to speak again. Jason was the first to break the silence. That had to be a prank, like some local teenagers trying to scare people off. But Natalie shook her head. There were no tire tracks. No footprints. Nothing. Still unsettled, They drove until they reached a small roadside diner in a town that didn't appear on most maps. The neon sign outside flickered, and the parking lot was empty aside from an old, rusted pickup. They went in for coffee and a break. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with eyes too sharp for someone so tired-looking, eyed them cautiously. "You kids just come out of Desert Hollow?" she asked, pouring coffee. Ethan blinked. "Yeah. How'd you know?" She sighed, setting the pot down. "You've got the look."
Pale.
Rattled. "Happens every few months." Natalie leaned in. "What do you mean?" "Old place. Nobody really camps there anymore. Locals say it's cursed. Some say haunted. Weird things happen. People hear voices. See figures in the rocks." Brooke frowned. "But why doesn't anyone warn travelers?" "Because nobody listens," the woman replied. "And the ones who go looking for trouble usually find it." Ethan tried to laugh it off. "Well, we're out of there now. Safe and sound." The woman didn't smile. "Are you?" They left quickly after that. The road twisted onward into Nevada, but something had shifted between them. The joy from earlier in the trip was gone. They began driving in shifts, avoiding night stops altogether. Everyone was on edge. A few nights later, at a motel in Northern California, things escalated. Jason had taken the room next to the other three. Around 2 a.m., Ethan was woken by a scream. They rushed into Jason's room to find him in the corner, pale and shaking. "She was in here," he gasped. "A woman.
Tall.
Pale skin. Hair covering her face.
She pointed at me.
Said my name." The others searched the room. Nothing. The door had been locked. No sign of forced entry. Natalie sat beside him, holding his trembling hand. "Jason, we need to go home. Now." They agreed to end the trip. California would have to wait. The next morning, they began the drive back to Denver, but the strange happenings didn't stop. They found unfamiliar symbols etched into the van's windshield. Their GPS would reroute itself, taking them in loops. Once, they passed the same mile marker 3 times despite going straight. And Natalie kept seeing the woman Jason described, in reflections, in dreams, even once at a gas station where she turned and swore the woman was standing at the edge of the pumps, watching silently. They reached Denver 5 days later, worn and disturbed. They parted ways with a hollow sense of closure. Each one tried to resume normal life, but the events of the road trip lingered like a stain they couldn't scrub away. Jason developed insomnia. Brooke moved in with her parents and avoided long drives. Ethan sold his car and refused to talk about what happened. Natalie started seeing a therapist, but even there, she couldn't explain everything, like the way she still received postcards. Blank ones, with no return address. And how the stick figure drawings showed up once in her backyard sandbox, even though she had no children. Years passed. They drifted apart. Life went on, but not really. One day, Natalie got a call from Brooke. Jason had gone missing.
He had Ta.